people who are just like, yeah, just try it, just do it. It's a little bit too just flagrant to use words like that, because that's not helpful. That does not make it actionable. But I used to do martial arts because that also scared me. I did it in my mid-30s. Most people had done it like early on when they're kids. I did it as an adult with younger people too. But there's a quote that goes something like, the master has failed more times than the student has tried. Meaning you just go out there, you just do it, you keep doing it, and you keep trying, see if it works for you.
How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin? And how do you develop the mindset and skill set to be successful? Welcome, everyone, to the Sprint to Success with Design Thinking podcast. I'm your host, Saba Kidwai. Join me each week as I share the stories and strategies from the world's leading researchers and practitioners about why they believe the answer lies in practicing design thinking. The future is here. It just isn't evenly distributed. I remember hearing this quote from William Gibson for the first time, and it just shook me. When working with leaders, one of the questions I like to pose is how might we create a more equal distribution so that everyone has exposure and access to opportunities that they might want to pursue? One of the ways in which I hope to contribute to this answer is through the stories that I share here on the podcast. One of the resounding themes throughout all the episodes is the importance of developing a growth mindset to gain the confidence to pursue and design your life. This week, I had the pleasure of interviewing Steve Yu, the CFO and Assistant Dean at the UCLA School of Law. Steve also attended UCLA for his undergrad and later his MBA from Anderson. He is the president of the Anderson Alumni Association, and he's also an investor in a number of different businesses and startups that he's going to tell us more about. Steve and I have been friends for a while, and while we were having a conversation a few weeks ago, he said, I went from working on the farm to now being an executive at UCLA. And when I heard that sentence, I knew this was a story that we had to tell and one that we had to document to inspire so many young people out there wondering what the future might look like for them. What I appreciate most about guests like Steve is the actionable advice that he shares about how others can explore new avenues and new opportunities. I asked Steve to start at the beginning and share what it was like being a young boy on the farm. What I find most fascinating is that those same strategies that he's going to share are the ones that he leverages till this day.
Well, I would love to say it was my intention to be where I am and everything, but part of it is luck, part of it is hard work, part of it is surrounding yourself with good people. So let me start where I am now. So I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Dean at the UCLA School of Law. We're a top 15 law school, and I'm very proud of that. And I've been there for over 2 decades, so a long time. So that's now. Let me backtrack. Pre-college, my parents were immigrants from South Korea. They moved to Central California to start a farm, trying to be entrepreneurial, do their own thing. And so that's where I was born and raised. And so I spent 18 years on a farm in Central California as a farm boy. You know, my friends got to play sports after school, got summers off. I was in the field working 6 days a week, hard work. And I joke that I actually worked harder as a kid than I do now, because it is backbreaking work. And when it's yours, like, you don't have a choice. Like, you work your tail off. And one of my things that I have a lot of pride over is that I have a pretty high work ethic. I don't necessarily tire easy. I'm willing to work long days, weekends, and always dedicate a lot of energy to things. And part of it is just out of necessity growing up on the farm. Like I said, 6 days a week. There are 6 kids in my family. And I also joke that my parents had so many kids so that we could all be the workforce on the farm, which we were. So for most of my life, it was my two parents, my two grandmas, each of their moms, and my five siblings, three sisters, two brothers. There's six of us. And we all worked the farm. And so, but my parents still believed heavily in education. So we all went off to a 4-year university, all six kids got our degrees. Some went to UC Davis, some went to UCLA. And then that's kind of how the journey started from the farm. And I talk about going from the farm to the boardroom now, where I'm an executive at a top tier law school.
One of the immediate questions that struck me in listening to Steve share his journey was how he, as a young boy, was able to balance going to school with working on the farm. We all deal with adversities and different priorities growing up, and what can often make a difference in strengthening your academic and later your professional journey is your degree of self-awareness, self-management, and your relationship and decision-making skills. Steve's story highlights examples of how he leverages these areas from a young age. Steve shares how he leveraged these skills to create a balance between being a student and helping on the farm. Skills and strategies that remain with him till this day.
I think it was at the sacrifice of fun, honestly. and so as soon as I came home, I would change from school. I took the bus to school because we lived out in the countryside. My dad would already be in the field working. I'd change into my clothes, go out there. I'd work for 3 hours, 3 to 6 p.m. on any weekday, and then come home, eat dinner, change into my study clothes. I'd study, and then maybe watch a little bit of TV and go to sleep and start the day over. And Saturdays was all work from before the sun rose to till nighttime, and then Sunday was our day off to go to church and have our day of rest. And as I say this out loud, I'm realizing I kind of do that now, where I work all day, and then I have a few different side hustles that I work on in the evening. I watch a little bit of TV, and then I go to sleep, and then start it all over again. So I'm just literally realizing right now that's kind of how I live my life now.
Growing up, we all have different definitions of success. Oftentimes, what we start with is not our own version. And you'll often hear many people share how once they achieved their goals or what they thought success would look like, that they didn't leave them feeling fulfilled. When's the last time you sat down to evaluate your values and your definition of success? To reflect on where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go. Your core values and definition of success will then guide your decisions, help you focus your goals, inform the people that you associate with, and above all, bring you joy. I asked Steve what success meant to him and if that meaning has evolved over time.
I think back then, like most people now, that success was money, like making money. We were immigrants effectively. We had our own business, so money was a thing to success. We had to send kids to college and whatnot. But only recently have I kind of come across that, money is not the goal. It is not the signal of success. It's really helping people. It's really uplifting other people. At least for me, I've kind of identified that is my life's purpose, is to help influence, educate, build people up, especially other leaders. And so to me now, money is a tool. Don't get me wrong. I'm a CFO. I understand the importance of money. I manage $100 million a year for the school. And I like money as well, because it allows you to live a certain life, to travel and whatnot. But it is not the end goal itself. And I feel like that's where there's so much flaw in our society now, that it's like money, money, money. I think if you focus on what you're passionate about, what your purpose is, the money will come if you're successful in what you're doing. So it is a byproduct of success. It is not the sign of success.
One of the things that I appreciate most about what Steve shares is that nothing has to be an either or. It's about yes and. I can make money and live my passions, And the key to doing so lies in taking a non-linear approach to diversifying the type of work you do, and as a result, your income streams through the projects that you take on. Steve shares how he did this and the challenges that he had to overcome during that journey, the biggest one of all being the fear of public speaking.
Sometimes I don't even know what I do in any given day because I have so many different hats on. So let me just rattle off a few things that I'm involved in, just to give you a flavor of where I'm at. So CFO of the law school, that's a full-time job, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, week in, week out. I also went to the business school at UCLA, to the Anderson School of Management. So I have my MBA. And right now I'm the president of the Alumni Association for the LA chapter, responsible for something like 20,000 business school alumni. My brothers and I, we also own a cherry farm. My parents have since retired. They're in their mid-80s, but we now own 1,100 cherry trees that we grow, and that's kind of cool and kind of interesting. And
so you didn't leave farming then?
Not totally. Normally I would be in a suit with a tie when I go to the office pre-COVID days. But now, I'm not really in the farm getting my hands dirty. Now I get to just enjoy the fruits of our labor and just say that we're owners, and we hire a picking crew when it's harvest season and whatnot. I also am the lead angel investor in a tech startup called Buena, and it is a web extension helping with shopping and bringing influencers to people as well. I'm part of a venture capital fund platform that we're trying to help university startups find funding, find mentors, be successful. A buddy of mine, we also run an Amazon business on the side. And so, which is great because Amazon's just a phenomenal company. And I know they have bad press. And so despite that, it is a great way to make money. And then I also do public speaking. One of my real passions is I went from, I'll tell you a quick story, which is, when I first went to business school, I hated public speaking. I never spoke up in class. I never went to office hours, but I made the decision at that point that I would overcome my fear of public speaking. So I remember orientation weekend, I just got in off the wait list. So I already felt like I didn't really belong there. I was just an accountant at that point, and no offense to the accountants out there. On my left was an attorney, and on my right was a NASA scientist. And I'm like, okay, I got in off the wait list. I'm an accountant, and I got selected to give a presentation. I remember sitting there at dinner, and I'm like, I don't belong here. Like, I can't do this. Like, I felt that overwhelming fear, the butterflies in the stomach, the sense of wanting to vomit. And, I was this close to saying, I'm done. I don't belong here. I'm just going to walk out. Total imposter syndrome. I stuck with it. I gave the presentation. I didn't die. I felt like I wanted to die. I didn't die. And it went okay. And I'm like, okay, hey, I can do this. So I made the commitment. I'm going to get over my fear of public speaking. So throughout the next 3 years of business school, and I went part-time, I volunteered for every single presentation that I could. So I helped to manage some of that fear, lower that sense of overwhelmingness. But it wasn't until after I got my MBA that I realized the fear of public speaking and the effectiveness of being a public speaker are two very different things. And then I went on this other path of working on becoming a more effective speaker. So I joined Toastmasters. I did Toastmasters for 12, 13 years. Got into that, got on the competitive speaking circuit until to the point now where I went from trying to just develop myself to mentoring some people with public speaking to now giving big workshops. Last year, again, pre-COVID in 2019, I gave a talk to over 300 people at the LA Convention Center. So here's like the convention center is like almost kind of have made it. Not quite yet. I don't consider that fully making it. But 300 people on stage, just me. And so going from that person who wouldn't speak up in class to now being on stage at the convention center, like that's been kind of its own journey itself. And I realized that I really, really enjoy that because I get to really help people. I think the way I teach is very actionable, practical, in bite-sized pieces that make sense. And so, yeah, I love it. I love engaging like this too. Zoom is not quite the same, but hey, I'll take it. I'll take it.
One of my big takeaways from listening to Steve was how he was continuously nurturing his mindset through how he talks to himself and walks himself step by step in overcoming a fear of confronting a challenge. Mindset is a topic that I feel like you can never really hear enough about. You never know at what moment an idea or strategy might resonate with you, and these strategies also change over time for us as well. I asked Steve to share strategies he implemented to nurture and master his mindset.
I mean, you hear it all the time, so it's not anything new, and I don't want to just use it generically either, but it is. And the more I work on my own mindset, and then I work on my own nervous system, controlling the nervous system, which is a more biological part of the mindset, right? It's not just in your brain; it's the nervous system that you've got to help control. I'm learning that it's even more important. And so you had mentioned mindset last week when we talked, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do a couple of things for mindset. I meditate in the morning. I use a few different apps. I use Headspace, Calm, and Insight Timer, some combination thereof. Most of the time 2, sometimes 3 in the morning. And then I listen to inspirational speakers, motivational speakers, leadership coaches on YouTube as I get ready, as I shower in the morning, and as I get ready to, now that I've calmed my mind with all the meditating, now I'm trying to fill my mind with new skills, new thoughts, inspiration, energy. And so Tony Robbins is a big influence. I know he is for a lot of people as well. I've seen him live and just absolutely, utterly amazing. And so those are a few of the things that I do. But then as I got ready this morning, I'm like, I actually do a few more things. I'm just going to rattle a couple of things off. This is not for everyone. Some's going to resonate with some people, others not so much. But most mornings I do some combination of the meditating, listening to motivational speakers on YouTube. I will work out in the morning. Most mornings I will do a yoga class, a full hour yoga class. This morning I did Pilates. When I take a shower, the credit to Wim Hof, if you know who that is, the Iceman. I take at the end of I love the hot showers. I'm not going to give up my hot showers. But I take from 10 seconds to a minute, a cold shower. I will turn the heat off. I won't think about it. The more I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm not really in the mood for a cold shower today. So no, maybe tomorrow. More recently, I'm just like, okay, off. Not going to think about it. I'm like, oh. And every time it still shocks me. I've seen Wim Hof and he's just like, yeah, all good in the snow, swimming in the Arctic. That's not me. I suffer every time. But the cold shower really kind of smacks you, wakes you up, gets you going, opens up your blood vessels. So there is both the mental impact, but then there is a physiological impact as well. So working out, the cold shower, and I drink black coffee every morning. It's something I recently started to do more consistently. Is I put MCT oil into coffee. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with MCT oil. It's medium chain triglycerides. It's supposed to be brain food from what I read about it. And I find that it works. Like good fats, good cholesterol is, there's new studies about avocados and other things that are good for you. So the MCT oils are kind of the good fats. So I put that into my coffee. I'll work on an empty stomach because I do a little bit of intermittent fasting. And that's kind of how I start my day. So it ends up it can be quite involved, but it's like throughout the morning, especially working from home now, it actually works out pretty well.
Wow, that is incredible. And I love that you shared sort of like that variety of strategies, because you're right, like not everything is for everyone. But I am curious on your 2 cents, because I feel like I personally, I haven't quite gotten into the meditation thing yet. I feel like it's still something I'm working on trying to integrate into my routine, because I definitely needed to calm my mind down. And I love Calm, but I actually use Calm at night. I love their sleep stories. But one of the things that I always I'm a little irked by when people say, because I feel like these inspirational speakers have a huge impact on me as well, is it's just fluff, all these motivational quotes, all these things. Tell us a little bit about how that influences you, or just why you feel like those speakers are important and those ideas are important, and they're not just sort of like fluff the way some people may write them off.
Well, I'll address the meditation first. I've gone through various, you hear it all again, we hear the same thing. So none of this stuff is new. What it is does it suit you? Do you get it? Have you tried it long enough to really realize, hey, it works? And so I've had this.
And what is long? Sorry, I've got to pause you because I love, love, love. That is so important. What do you mean when you say long enough? Like, tell us about what that was like for you.
Like I try a lot of different things. I consider myself a lifelong learner. So someone will say something and I'm like, oh man, I've got to listen to that podcast. I got to read that book. I've got to try that nutritional supplement. I've got to do this. I got to try the cryo chamber and do negative 300 degrees. I got to do the float tank. I'm down. But when I do it, sometimes I'm like, yeah, didn't really feel it. Didn't really get it. I'll try it again. There's other things where I'm like, I don't know what happened, but holy crap, that worked. That was amazing. And so part of it is just my own anecdotal experience. But like with meditation, I've tried meditation. I'm like, I was into it and then didn't do it for years. And then like really into it and then not into it. And more recently, the apps help just as accountability. And it's to calm the mind. It's to focus the mind. It's just to breathe. It's just to take a break. It's a distraction, however you want to characterize it. But it is a nice way to peg yourself to something. And I noticed for myself, I did a 3-day silent Buddhist meditation retreat in San Diego. And that was kind of the big foray into it. And the thought of like silent, I'm like, holy crap, I talk a lot. Not talking for 3 days is scary to me. Luckily, we could talk a little bit here and there, but it was enough to set the table where I realized, okay, you know what, there is something to this. And I noticed that when I was having a stressful moment, the nervous system would want to kick up. But because I had been meditating, I could feel the nervous system kind of just do one of these things, just kind of sit down a bit. And so I'm like, wow, that's a pretty powerful observation. And then when you do the research, they actually talk about the increase in gray matter in the brain. So there is a physiological measurement that they can say. It's not just hokey stuff where it's like, really, is that really real? Because I also burn Palo Santo, sage, clear energy. Can I measure that? Not really. Do I believe in it? Trying to, but I'm willing to try it. And so there are things that you can measure and things that maybe you can't. And meditation is one of those that you absolutely can measure. And hey, I'm like, if it builds gray matter in the brain, that sounds like a pretty good thing. It's a worthy investment for 10 minutes a day. Everyone has 10 minutes. I don't care how busy you are. You have 10 minutes. You can do it.
Throughout this entire episode, there are really two overarching themes. One, of not being afraid to try something new. And number two, the importance of mentors, accountability partners, and people who will support you on your journey. Time and time again, people are the difference that make a difference in both your ability to achieve and your risk of failure. It can often be one of the hardest parts of any growth journey in learning who to stay close to and who to keep at a distance. Always remember, people can drag you down just as easily as they can bring you up. I love how Steve reframes the conversation around mentorship and how to approach both being a mentor and being a mentee.
First off, I avoid fear altogether, completely. I don't try a lot of new things. I do a lot of things, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of things I don't do because I'm afraid or because I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm not really good at that. I don't play any instrument. So do I want to learn how to play piano? Yeah, I think that would be great. I know it's good for the brain and everything. But the idea of trying, I'm like, I look at that and it gives me anxiety just to think about learning something new. So people who are just like, yeah, just try it, just do it. It's a little bit too just flagrant to use words like that because that's not helpful. That does not make it actionable. But there is a quote that I go back to, which is, I used to do martial arts because that also scared me. I did it in my mid-30s. Most people had done it like, they did Taekwondo or something early on when they're kids. I did it as an adult with younger people too. But there's a quote that goes something like that: the master has failed more times than the student has tried. The master has failed more times than the student has tried. Meaning, you just go out there, you just do it, you keep doing it, and you keep trying, see if it works for you. I think for trying something new, find someone that you know that has done it, that you can partner with, that they can take you to the first class. I picked up hot yoga about 3 years ago. Now I'm in love with hot yoga. We can't go right now, but I do yoga now every day. And back then I had heard, yeah, you know what, yoga is fantastic. It's great for you. It's good for breathing. It's important. A healthy spine is a healthy life. Like all these great things. Like, yeah, wow, I really should do yoga. How often did I do it? Once a year, once every 6 months. And I do it. I'm like, that's great. But I finally made this commitment 3 years ago, but I was scared. I walk in, I'm like, where do I park? Where do I go? How much does it cost? Help me. Do I bring my mat? What do I wear? Like so many different things. But as I ventured into my yoga journey, I partnered with some of my instructors. I found a new community, a new circle of friends who we get to try things together. So last year I tried aerial yoga, which sounds pretty wacky. You're suspended from these.
I've seen that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, what the heck's going on? What am I doing here? Like your legs this way, you're suspended in animation. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. But it was fun because I went with a friend. And so I think that's really where the difference is if you want to do something, find someone that knows how to do it or is willing to try with you. Make it a community thing so you don't feel so solo and afraid and isolated and not willing to try. I think that's the best thing. And so related to that, this is where I tell people that mentoring, being a mentor and being a mentee is not about age. It's not about where you are in your career. It's really about just surrounding yourself with people who might know something more than you. And so my meditation journey actually started because of one of my mentees. She was a senior at UCLA, so 4th year senior undergraduate. Here I am well into my 40s here, and she was telling me she's like, Steve, you've got to download Headspace. You've got to start using it. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, wait a minute, who's the mentor here? Who's the mentee? Because she would do these 7-day, 100% silent meditation retreats. She would do 14-day meditation retreats. And I'm like, wow, like I'll start with 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes a day. I don't know if I could do a week or 2 weeks of completely silent meditation. But it was her who introduced me to that. So I consider her, even though I'm her mentor officially, I feel like she mentors me. And I actually learn a lot through that mentor-mentee relationship. So I do find that those relationships be 360 degrees.
The master has failed more times than the student has tried. That's when I wrote down and put up on my desk as a reminder for every time I feel like I'm on the brink of giving up. One of the areas I believe we need to talk more about is advocacy. Not only the importance of developing authentic relationships so that you have people who can advocate for you, but the importance of also learning to advocate for yourself. You'll hear so many stories that start with, if it wasn't for this person, then this never would have happened. I know I personally would have never had my start if it hadn't been for my mentor, a former professor of mine and dear friend, Bruce Barron. As we were approaching the end of my teaching credential and master's program at UC Irvine, Bruce had told us about a job opportunity. As is often the case, we love the sound of a role, but we don't think we're good enough, so we don't apply. Fast forward a few weeks later, and Bruce pulls me aside and says, I was talking to the district and they want you to know that they've lost your application. They want to interview you and they'll be calling you soon. And I was like, Bruce, I didn't even apply. He was shocked. Do you not want the job? He asked me. Well, yes, of course, I said. And I had to tell him that I hadn't applied because I didn't really think I was good enough. He was like, go home, get that application in, and be more confident. I'll never forget that moment and the power of having an advocate. That wouldn't be the last time Bruce advocated for me or made me believe more deeply in myself and my ability to do the work that I was so deeply passionate about. It's one of the reasons I love highlighting stories like Steve's and so many other people on the podcast. Passion alone is not enough, but passion combined with hard work, mentorship, strong relationships, and showing up as your authentic self primes you for being in the right place at the right time. what some may refer to as luck. This is especially important as we reflect on the racial inequities in our system that we've been hearing so much about. While we must advocate for change, we cannot wait for it. Steve shares advice for how people in leadership roles can begin to make a difference, and the difference that it makes in his own journey as a leader as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the relationships you build, both in your personal life, professional life, in your job, are everything. And for me, I worked at UCLA in the same office literally for 24 years. So a very long time, not really typical these days. And I was promoted to CFO 4 years ago because I took over from my boss, who I had worked for the entire 20 years before. He was CFO the whole time. He hired me. I came in as an entry-level accountant. I was the lowest paid person at the law school, literally the lowest. And over the next 2 decades, I did more. I tried to add more value. He advocated for me. He then promoted me to accounting manager, and then to controller, and then to assistant dean, to 4 years ago when I took over his job as CFO. And part of it is because the relationship, that mentor relationship, that coach relationship was so powerful. This guy, John Power, just such an amazing man. He's my second dad. He's like my grandpa. He's my friend. And even though he retired 4 years ago, we still keep in contact maybe every few weeks or so. We will send an email, a text or something, because it was the relationship. Like, I felt he gave me the space to run. He would push me. He would, he knew how to get me to keep growing. I got my MBA part-time in between there as well. And that was where I learned that advocacy by someone who cares about you, the working for someone who is going to mentor you, who's going to bring you to a meeting, who's going to help you grow, and maybe that even means helping you find another job. It's finding people who care about you, about your success, about your growth as a person, as an individual. And so I've tried to take those values into my own leadership style with my employees. I have 10 employees that report to me. My controller's been with me for 11 years. My head of HR has been with me for 14 years. I have a person who left 10 years ago and has come back, and she's on her second tour of duty with me. 2 other people who are 6 years plus. I think that's a testament to the strength of those relationships. And because it's not just a job then. If it was just a job, we can all do some job, find something that pays us the most. But in terms of fulfillment as a person, as a professional, having a boss who believes in you, having a boss that you trust, who has your best interests, it really changes the nature of work. So work doesn't feel so much like work. And there's a quote that I talk about too. Most people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. And that's because they don't believe their boss has their best interests, if they're not taking care of them or help promoting them. And so that's why I stayed. My tenure at the law school is specifically because of him, and he believed in me and encouraged me even to go off to business school, where he's a graduate of the Anderson School as well. And I mentor a lot of people. I'm a mentee myself to other people as well, because it is the relationships. It is about making yourself better. It's about having someone to talk to, having a network of friends. I think during this time of COVID and quarantine and isolation and virtualness, having that network of people is even more important. And I can feel it even in my working office, that those who've been around a long time, we have a foundation of a relationship in person. But the ones who are new, the relationship's not quite as strong, obviously. So we do still need some of that people interaction. And so there's having a good boss, there's having mentors and being a mentee yourself. And then I think there's just having a network of just great people that you believe in, that believe in you, that can make introductions, you can hang out with, that you can talk about the world and society and what's happening, which is why I volunteer with the Alumni Association. It's not paid. It's all volunteer. My role as president is for 3 years. And it takes time every week. That's time I could be doing something else. But I do it because this is the Alumni Association for the business school. We're a top tier business school. the people I'm around who tops in their careers, in their industries, executives in their companies. And oftentimes I sit there, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm such a loser. Look at all these amazing things that they're doing. And so just surrounding yourself. And it's not a competitive thing. It's an encouraging thing. It's seeing opportunities like, oh, I can do this. And I'll cap off the networking and the power of your network story is one of my other side hustles is I'm an investor in a hotel in the Bahamas. And we bought our first property 3 years ago. It's called the Peace and Plenty in Great Exuma in the Bahamas. It is through a very good friend of mine during my days as a student at the Anderson School. Truth be told, he was my drinking buddy in school. But we were close and we had similar values and we like have this mutual love in our friendship for each other. So fast forward 15 years, gives me a call and says, hey, Steve, we're buying this property. I'm inviting only family and very close friends. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So we've now bought 3 properties down there. We're trying to create a whole hotel chain out of this Peace and Plenty. And we get to have our owners meetings there each year, right? Our owners meetings in the Bahamas every year for a week. And I'm like, but that's because of the networking of finding people with good values, good people. And so, which is why I do all this stuff that exposes me to amazing people.
Steve's emphasis on the power of mentorship is probably one of the most actionable steps that we can take in our efforts towards eliminating systemic racism. I asked Steve how mentors and mentees can go about finding individuals and what they should be looking for. What I love most about what Steve shares is his take on why age shouldn't even be a factor.
There's so many different opportunities if you just know where to look. For mentees, I've had people approach me because I'm very visible at UCLA and there's 500,000 alumni. So I have people like, hey, Steve, will you be my mentor? And my answer is no. I don't know you. Like, get to know me. Let's talk. Let's interact. People often say like, yeah, invite me to coffee or invite me to lunch. And again, pre-COVID, I actually like my time is actually pretty limited. And if I don't know you, I don't want to necessarily invest a lot of time. That may sound kind of weird, but you got to protect your time. So maybe I'll do a quick email. Usually it's got to be a warm intro, but I won't take on just any mentee either. Like I only want to mentor people who I know will take those lessons, the skills, the experience, and then mentor other people. Because if it's always about me, if the person's always about me, that's not the same values that I want out of my mentees. For mentors, I think most businesses have some sort of mentor program. And if there's not, create one. In fact, I was on a call yesterday, a Zoom yesterday, because there's a mentor-mentee program at UCLA. And when the ask went out to campus, I'm like, yeah, I'll throw my hand up. And there's only like maybe 20 of us across the campus out of the 30,000 staff that work there who volunteered to be a mentor, because it's an opportunity for me to share my experience. And it also holds me accountable to stuff that I say. So I think if you want to be a mentor, just start sharing your experience. Like these days with Zoom, the benefits of Zoom right now is like there's 1 million panels, there's 1 million webinars. If you have any sense, any experience, you can be a mentor, right? My yoga mentor is 26, but she's an absolute badass, and I respect her and look up to her. So we have to get rid of this sense of like mentor is older, mentee is younger. It might be the case, but it doesn't have to be. It's just people who have more experience in the particular thing you want to be mentored on.
Absolutely. I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it. I keep using the word beautiful because I feel like all your ideas are just so So I just think about the kinds of struggles people are sharing today, whether it's just online through their stories, through news articles.
Yeah.
And I feel like so much of what you share, like, like you said, it's putting in that effort to just integrate it. But like you shared earlier, not just doing it once or twice, really allowing yourself that consistency to know what's going to work for you and whatnot. So, wow. Thank you, Steve. This was so incredible. If people want to learn from you, where is the best place for them to connect with you online? What can I share?
LinkedIn is a
Okay.
great place to start. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that way that we can start the conversation there. And so that is definitely a great place. And I do want to go back to something you had mentioned earlier or asked about, are all these quotes and speakers just fluff? My answer is no. You just need to hear it at the right time. And you need to hear it on a regular basis. Like I said, I literally listen to these YouTube videos every day, every morning for the last couple of years. And so I've heard some of the same stuff over and over and over 100 times. And then that one time I'm like, damn, that's powerful. Holy crap. I wish I had heard that before. But it's like, I know I've heard that. So the context changes, you change, the opportunity changes, or maybe you hear something that it resonated with you before is now in your experience and your struggles now really resonating with you now. So that's why it's just, it's like eating healthy. It's like working out. You kind of need to do it on a consistent, almost, I would argue, daily basis to feed your mind and be encouraged. Where we are at right now with COVID and quarantine and being virtual, it's hard. It's really, really hard. I have had struggles with it. I have had moments, there's a couple of months where I'm like, I'm going to thrive. I got this. I can now do this. I have this extra time. I can sleep more. And just like, this is going to be amazing. And then there's just other times where I'm just like, damn, this is like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is too hard. I need the people interaction. Like, what's going on? Like, feeling dazed and confused. And so I would end with the self-care is so important. And that is different for every person. For me, I'm an extrovert. I know that. I get energy from being around people, talking with people, like interacting with you, Saba, like gives me energy. There's other people who are introverts, and you would know if you are an introvert or an extrovert based on if you're around people, do you feel energized after or not energized, and you need to crawl under your rock. And so you need to know like which one is yours. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's just knowing which one it is and what self-care looks like for you. For me, it's to go do a yoga class. And for me, my yoga practice is daily. I try to do it 7 days a week. I mean, in reality, it's six days probably. I might miss one, but I go for 7 because it's foundational. It calms my mind. This is the distraction that I need to then go back to the rest of the world that we have to live in. And I think we need to name it. But it is up to each individual to own it, though. And to own their self-care and to own it and to take the actions necessary. That means surrounding yourself with people, if it means cooking, if it means getting off social media, whatever it is to each person, you just got to know what that is and actually execute on it.
I couldn't agree more with Steve when he says, even though to us it feels like we're saying the same thing again and again, or people are posting the same thing again and again, you never know in what moment that idea is going to resonate with someone. I share that with you to encourage you to keep sharing your message over and over, as you never know when it's going to resonate and have an impact. And to also consider who might benefit from hearing this episode with Steve and hearing his journey as well. As always, thanks for tuning in. It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you still have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Sprint to Success with Design Thinking community.